When I started, what we said was we find hidden assets, overlooked opportunities, underperforming revenue, undervalued relationships, underutilized resources, windfall revenue, newfound profit centers, sustainable income streams, understanding how to work on the geometry of the business.
He is a legendary business consultant who has helped generate more than $50 billion in sales for his clients. Tony Robbins credits him with monumental contributions to his success, and Forbes has named him one of the top 5 executive coaches in the United States, working with over 10,000 businesses across more than 1,000 industries. His skills are unmatched. Known as the master of non-linear strategic thinking, his strategies have transformed and inspired a generation of marketers and business experts. Our guest of honor, the one, the only, Mr. Jay Abraham.
That was great. Thank you. All right, let's get on with it. I'm ready.
Yeah. Well, we're glad to have you here, and we really appreciate your time. And it's kind of a special time of the year, I think, as we wind down. Today's New Year's Eve, and we're moving into a new year. And I want to start it off like this. You've been described as a marketing. Some people say the marketing master of the universe, and you're credited with over $50 billion in sales and revenue from your work. And you've consulted with over 10,000 companies as an entrepreneur over the years. And even Tony Robbins shouts your graces. So Jay, how would you describe what you do?
When I started, what we said was we find hidden assets, overlooked opportunities, underperforming revenue elements, undervalued relationships, underutilized resources, and turn them into windfall revenue, newfound profit centers, sustainable income streams, and we do most of it for no additional investment or risk. That's what we used to say. I think today, because I went from being very heavily marketing wise to a whole broad swath, it's probably understanding how to work on the geometry of the business, how to get the same effort, same time, same allocation of resources, same investment, same access to the market, same everything to produce multiplied results that combine together to deliver exponential top line, but even more significant bottom line. And we do a lot of work teaching people that everyone, Chris talks about the 10x moonshot, and they're always talking about top line. Okay, but to grow your top line 10x, you need an enormous amount of expertise. You're normally going to do it through technological shifts. That's going to be very expensive, take a lot of time. It usually is like building a custom house. Doesn't always turn out the way you want, costs a lot. You've got to fund that cost from either borrowing or cash flow or dilution, and very challenging. It's about, I won't say 100 times easier, but it's profoundly easier to multiply your bottom line 10x. And with that, you could end up funding the 10x top line growth. But most of the people want, if you're an entrepreneur, you're not going to get to $1 billion. Maybe you're going to take your $10 million company to 50, or your $50 million company to 200 million. But your goal in doing it is one of 3 things. It's to make a lot more profit that you can then use for lifestyle and investment and wealth creation, or to create enough EBITDA that somebody will acquire it for a meaningful exit with a higher than industry multiple. And it's more focused really on profit than it is revenue. But most people they think that the correlation that they have right now is the only correlation they can have, that there's no more control over increasing bottom line for far less top line addition. So I work on all those kind of things today. But when I started, it was mostly marketing, advertising, and sales. But we get into much more sophisticated stuff today. It's probably a more protracted answer than you want, but that's the answer.
We're here speaking on New Year's Eve 2024, and where I am in Europe, it's 8 p.m. And where you are, it is, I believe, 11 a.m. I believe if you're in California.
It
Yeah.
is.
And I have a two-part question.
Give me part two first.
You might mess up my question there, Jake.
Okay.
First off, what is Jay doing on New Year's Eve today and New Year's Day tomorrow? And then the second question is, how do you personally reflect on a year gone by, and how do you approach setting a tone for the new year?
Okay, well, I'll try to answer the first very candidly, and the second two ways. I'm an anomaly, but I'll tell you how I would recommend others do it. Just you're not asking, but I will tell you that. So when I was younger, we would go party on Wayne all over the place with friends and dress up and go to either parties or very high-end restaurants and eat and drink and trip the lights fantastic. But in my older age, we stay home. What I'm going to do as soon as we're done with this is finish some stuff I have to get done before about 1 o'clock, and then we're going to go take. I've got my family at home. I've got a lot of children and their dogs and their cats and their girlfriends and their wives, and we're going to take a ping pong lesson because we're going to have a ping pong tournament. And my wife, who happens to be a remarkable cook, is going to cook a very exquisite piece of salmon for everybody. And we are going to play ping pong, eat salmon, watch bad movies that we can make fun of, and wait until midnight to have a glass of champagne. So it'll be boringly familial as opposed to exciting. I've spent New Year's Eve in Hong Kong before. I've been around the world. This is much, when you get older, you're much more, I think you're invested more in your family because you realize how relevant that is and how irrelevant a lot of material things are. It doesn't mean I don't like material things. As far as assessing last year, it depends, and I'm going to tell you what I do, and then you can overlay that to other things, and I'll tell you what I would recommend people do. So I look at what I have accomplished, but I divide that in many denominators. One is how many people have been able to help, and help doesn't mean sharing rhetoric that they do nothing with. It means how many people that I was exposed to, that I shared meaningful and profound expertise. And I can say it's profound because much of my work is the byproduct of people who've influenced me, that I basically would turn into a hybrid that was original synthesis. How many of the people that I've shared it with did anything with it? And how many of those people did monumental things with it? And how many of them that did that were adding values societally? They were not just opportunistically making money. They were really making a difference that deserved to be rewarded. That's the first thing. The second is, have I grown? When you get into the kind of stuff I do, you realize that there's adages: you grow or die, you expand or you contract, you multiply or you diminish. Have I grown as an individual? Have I grown my body of work? Have I grown past sedentary methodology? Have I grown in my humility, my humanity, my passion for people and possibilities? Or have I regressed? And if I have grown not just as a human being? Have I grown my business? Have I created a mechanism of my business that's going to make it better next year, or is it going to be worse? If what I did this year was not the fullest realization of what I know to be possible from my team, myself, my body of work, my capability, what am I going to do differently next year? I also look at at did I have a balanced life? Was I just a workaholic? Or did I enjoy life and bring joy to others, family, friends? Do I make working with me fun and enjoyable? Do I grow people as opposed to trying to squeeze everything I can out of them? Do I have hopeless enough curiosity that I'm always trying to listen and learn as opposed to talk and tell? Things like that, Chris.
I think that's a wonderful answer. And I'm curious, maybe put you on the spot a little here. Can you share a couple ways you felt you've grown this year? I think it's important because I know when I was in my 20s, I thought by the time I was 30, I'd have everything figured out. And then when I was in my 30s, I thought, oh, surely by 40, like I'd have it, I don't need to grow after that. And every year I prove myself wrong, obviously. So when we see an individual like yourself, we're like, oh, Jay's still growing and he's still focused on growing. And I think that's really important for us younger guys, younger generations here. So I'm curious
Sure.
on ways you
Yeah,
felt
yeah.
you've grown.
Well, I'll tell you the worst way I've grown. I've gained weight. So that's and I'm trying to lose it. I stopped drinking at least temporarily, and I'm changing my nutrition. I don't exercise a lot, but I that's the negative growth. The positive growth is that I have been introduced to a lot of new thinking, and I have tried to benefit from it. I have gotten access to new clients in new industries that fascinate me. I have been invited, and I've gone to Israel and gotten involved with the technology world, and they have a very sophisticated, very high end cybersecurity. I'm I've got I developed partnerships that I used to have but let go fallow in Japan, now in India, in other parts of the world. I have developed a new methodology that I'm introducing in a new program next year, which is it's got many names. We haven't settled on the name, but it's basically a binary breakthrough that's the equivalent of exponential square. It uses totally two different power sources to produce double exponential quality growth very predictably. And it's a very sophisticated methodology that I think I've been able to bring down to lowest common denominator level so anybody can understand it and apply it. But it's the driver of about 50 of the most prominent and distinctive and preemptive companies in the global market. It's taken about 40 companies that I studied from tiny to monumental, and I think it's applicable to anybody. And I'm focused next year a lot on not competing on an equal playing field, but understanding how to gain every element of absolute ethical advantage you can so that you're not forced to play a linear game, a status quo game, a game similar to everybody else. I've introduced a bunch of different what I try to do, which has been good and bad for me, is most of my colleagues who are experts have I'm going to call it one trick pony, but I don't mean it demeaning, but they're tacticians, and they're very world class tacticians. I chose a different route. I chose understanding more of the holistic integration of leverage points that could produce geometric increases and improvement singularly, but when they combine, it's exponential and it's off the charts. So I keep evolving it. I did an introduction of a thesis called the Hypergrowth Business Playbook about halfway through the year. I did an introduction of something called the 7 Steps to Create Business Wealth Without Risk earlier in the year. I'm introducing this now, and there's a lot of powerful methodology that I try to integrate, but it's very different most of my contemporaries. Not necessarily, well, I think it's better because it's more result assured if you execute on it. I also am getting back into, I used to be, I would call it world class. I don't know if it was the world authority, but I did probably more sophisticated joint ventures, strategic alliances, partnerships, endorsement deals, setting a company up to be the recommended provider to an organization, co-branding. We have 125 ways to generate referrals, as an example, 100 and some odd ways to set up power partnerships. And I'm getting back into that because I think it's very important in a world where people's attention and discrimination is so hard to really accomplish. But things like that.
I saw you speak at our friend Jordan Hall's event in Austin a couple months ago. And what I really loved most about your presentation was how incredibly big and abundant that you think and that you operate. And hearing these things, it really made me feel like you're the type of individual that doesn't think anything is impossible. And it's one of the reasons I started this podcast, is because I wanted to learn from others that were operating on a different level than I was. And I could take that knowledge and then share it with the world. And I've realized how it all comes back to, for me, I think it's mindset. Like mindset is really a foundation of being able to operate on those levels. I'm wondering if you agree with that, but also, how did you learn to think like that? Because you mentioned one thing that stood out for me in that presentation was the power partnerships and the joint ventures and the referrals that you were connecting on the levels that you were. So going back to that, I'm curious, like, how did you?
And I'm going to be very, I'm going to look, I'm going to embarrass myself because I've done about 8 totally different keynotes in the last 6 or 7 months, and I'm trying to remember which theme I talked about. What was the macro theme that I talked about at Jordan's?
Well, you showed us a lot of examples of the partnerships, the joint ventures, and also the amount of money that corporations were making
And so
from.
I talked almost all about just that one activity, right?
Quite a bit
Partnership.
about it. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, because I think that that's so powerful and it's so safe and it's so profound, and all these big corporations have discovered it. Uh, but I think the reason that I have my unique, I would call it world business worldview, is that I've navigated and been on the front lines of capitalism for, the 10,000 companies is interesting, but it's 1,000 plus industries.
Okay.
And I've been able to very uh, firsthand and empirically understand, observe, and see the broadest spectrum of different ways to create a strategy, a business model, access a market, uh, uh, lead generate, convert, revenue models, positioning models, advantage gaining models, preemptive, monopolistic advantage. I've seen how all kinds of corporations and entrepreneurs were able to gain preemptive positioning in their niches or markets, the different ways they either filled voids nobody else saw or improved dramatically on values that were being normally given by their contemporaries, their competitors. I've also probably gained unimaginable value because I've helped over my career literally 300 plus world-class experts, the Tony Robbins, the Brian Tracy's, the Stephen Covey's, about anybody imaginable. And even in the digital marketing world, I've had influence, not always directly, with everyone from Russell Brunson and Jeff Walker and Rich Sheffrin and Jesus, just too many people. I can't remember them. And when I've had influence on people, I've helped a lot of them directly, but I couldn't help them until they gave me a distilled summary, a compression, understanding, education of their unique body of work. So I possess an unimaginable understanding of what is really possible. In answer to your question, do I believe your your thesis that it's mindset? I mean, Tony believes it's psychology 80% and activities or tactics or approaches 20. I think the only caveat I would say is belief without understanding of the mechanism is suboptimal. If you believe you can do something and then you use grit, everyone thinks grit is the mechanism for great achievement. It's actually probably like, I would call it a constraint. You want to find the highest yielding alternatives that outperform what everybody else is doing. And that can't happen by staying just in your industry. If you look at where great breakthroughs come from, they rarely ever come from within an industry. Things like fiber optics that totally transformed telecommunication was not created in that industry. It came from aerospace and was borrowed. FedEx created a whole industry by borrowing what's called the hub and spoke check clearing process our Federal Reserve Bank uses to clear checks first thing in the morning so that people don't bounce checks. Viagra came from heart medicine. Rogaine came from pimple medicine. The ballpoint pen or roll-on deodorant, one or the other borrowed it from each other. I've been very blessed because I have Hopeless Cure. The number one baby buggy company does $400 million, uses the collapsible wheels from airplanes. And I realized that I created something called funnel vision versus tunnel vision. Funnel vision is traveling outside your industry to find the real breakthroughs and the higher performing and superior performing alternatives. I also realized, Chris, and I think this is something a lot of people should think about, there is a fallacy in the concept of best practices. And it doesn't matter the industry you're in. When you learn a best practice, if you are fortuitous enough to learn it early in the process, you have a very short window of advantage. However, whoever has developed it and trying to disseminate it is trying to get everybody to use it. When everybody uses the same best practice, it just becomes basically standard operating procedure. And it's can be better for your bottom line, can be better for your productivity, can be better if you pass it on to your market, but you have no advantage. So I think that the breakthroughs come from outside. I learned how to do all that. And if you sort of bring it all together, and then in the average week, I will have interaction with 15 totally diverse clients, two or three different experts. I've committed myself selfishly that I don't want to stagnate intellectually. And you and I talked offline. I'm I would guess I'd call myself a mad scientist or a savant. What I'm good at, I'm very good, but I don't do digital marketing. I don't do AI. I don't usually turn my computer on. Somebody, does all the that kind of stuff for me. So I have to be very committed to continually growing my strength and not being closed-minded and being open to appreciating, understanding what other people understand about everything that I don't, and evaluating it, and anything that makes sense that I can add to the arrows in my quiver, do so. And I think that's a really good recommendation for everyone.
Are you good at staying focused in your superpowers? Because I myself, and I know other entrepreneurs are, they have the shiny object syndrome, and a new thing comes in, AI or NFTs or
Yeah.
crypto, starting a
Yeah.
new thing.
Yeah, I would say absolutely not. I am a poster boy for adult attention deficit. I have the memory of a gnat who's had a lobotomy, and I I have to work my heart out because I have a very fertile mind and I create all kinds of things, and I get bored when they work, and I don't want to do them ever again. I'll do something once and don't really want to personally do it anymore. One of the reasons I have a very diverse clientele of real, not massive, but significant businesses is that I can exercise my highly diverse creativity and dispense it or disseminate it through lots of different clients who have to do all the work. But in my own business, I drive everybody crazy. I probably have 10 concepts a week I want them to do, and I just overwhelm them. And the stuff that we do very well, I don't spend a lot of time on. I would fire myself, but I get by because I have loads of clients and I have people that seek me out on a worldwide basis. But no, it's very hard to stay focused. And I would say to you, I've got a partnership with an app that does it. I'm not gonna promote it, but there's an app out there that does it. There is one that I like a lot, and there's one called Newcom that I have an interest in, and it's like a $50 a year, and it uses neuroscience to allow you to get your mind in the right state. You want everything from creativity to focus to re-energizing to sleep. And I think we need to discipline ourselves. It's very hard. And the more creative you are, I mean, that it's a tormenting life because you want to be much more organized and focused. And it's very difficult because you see so many possibilities, and life to you is a 3D movie and you got glasses and everyone else is a 2D movie, and it can be very frustrating. So you have to work constantly, and you've got to realize that tomorrow will come, that yours is not the only great idea today. There's plenty of great ideas. My life is like a bus stop. If I don't do one thing, there's always another that comes tomorrow and the next day. And it's just a matter of realizing that it's an infinite well of possibilities. So you take your time and develop out. And if you do it right, you're going to be much better at building one thing out and getting it really stabilized and monetized and sustainable. But it's easier said than not, because it's easy to come up with the next idea and the next idea. And implementing and staying focused is hard. Creative people are best served by getting something started and then reinvesting that money, even if they want it for their lifestyle, reinvesting it in people who are really good at managing and growing, and then doing the next or the next division or the next product, and not trying to be what they are not. Unfortunately, creative people want to be everything, and we're usually very, very, very masterful at a few things and very mediocre at a lot of things, but we don't really always delegate and find the best. One of my former mentors always used to say, hire the best and cry only once when you have to agree to pay them, because somebody who's great at what you're not could be 5 or 10 times the impact of somebody who is mediocre. And you want to play the game to win. If you think of business as a competitive sport, which it is, and you decide, do you want to just be a competitor like in basketball that's number 5, or do you want to be the champion? If you want to play a championship game, you've got to figure out 2 things. You got to know the maximum playbook available so you can create the maximum game plan that in your mind will outperform whoever you're competing against with every, as I said, ethical advantage. However, you've got to be able to shift. You've got to be able to do power pivots or radical redos or rethinks. You got to do resets whenever necessary, and a lot of people don't. They just keep driving with the same strategy or the same approach or the same media. And there's a really great statement, Chris. It says you do not want to have your business dependent on too much concentration risk. Concentration risk is a very fascinating concept. It can mean dependency on one source, platform, one salesperson, one distributor. It can be concentrating on one person, yourself. It can be concentrating on only a few clients that are 80-20 of your business. It can be concentrating on one tired approach that isn't growing. And when you understand that, you change your whole mindset. I'm giving you a lot of perhaps heavy duty stuff, but that's how my mind works.
I'm going to ask one more question, Jay, and then I'm going to open it up to the audience.
Sure.
If you could distill your life's work into one principle that all entrepreneurs should know, simply because you talk about the geometry of business, and I can tell you look at this in a very analytical method. I think would be a good way to describe it. If you could give us one simple principle that embraces your life's work and your focus, what would you tell us?
Is that most people don't have a clue how much more is possible from whatever they do. And when they learn how much more is possible methodologically, they should reevaluate whether they're doing it in that arena, that business, or that geography is really the highest and best use of yourself. If you study high, I mean, I've got 97 different categories of exponential performance improvement that we've developed over my very long career. But if you study highest and best use theory, which you should, most people get the least and the worst use out of their time, their opportunity, their people, because they're not driven to explore and examine and evaluate higher, better, safer, faster, bigger performing alternatives for their business. But just to give you a really interesting example, and I'll give you a concluding quote, and then you can have your people ask me questions if they like, is that I used to do very, very large and expensive seminars, and I would teach the compressed spectrum of my body of work at that time was quite a bit. And at the end, if I got questions for, I can remember like a barber would want to know how to grow his, because we had every size type business, his his barber shop to triple his income. And I would say to the person from my heart, if that's all you want to do with this proprietary knowledge, then I'll tell you first thing you do the second. But I would ask you to think, do you really want to limit yourself to use it for that when you could probably get someone else? You could sell your barbershop, you could have someone else run it, you could close it, take this methodology to something that had 10 times the potential. And most people don't think that way. They don't question constantly themselves, their direction, their strategy, their business model. If you take a derivative of the quote by Socrates, who said, a life that isn't constantly examined isn't worth living, you could extrapolate and say a business that is not constantly examined and reevaluated and re-examined isn't worth owning. And that's sort of it. And I'll give you the quote, and then we can ask. There's a quote from I believe it might have been Bob Proctor. I can't remember who the origin is, and if I could remember, I would ascribe it to him or her. But it's this: most people struggle non-verbally. They silently torment themselves with the wrong question. The question they ask themselves non-verbally, just it's bouncing constantly in their brain is, am I worthy of this goal? Can I really grow this business to a $500,000 income, or staying viable with all the worldwide competition, or all the expense now of getting a lead or a buyer or whatever? And he used to say, when you understand how much more is truly possible from time, effort, opportunity, access, human capital, financial capital, intellectual capital, relational capital, the right question to ask is not, are you worthy of the goal, but is the goal you set worthy of you? So that's a really sort of a conclusion of what I think my life has been dedicated to try to help people question.
Believe it or not, I actually posted that on my Facebook about 2 weeks ago. That's an amazing quote. I love it.
Thank
Okay.
you.
So we're going to open it up to the audience here. First
Sure.
question that came in is Tim Cassidy. Tim, you want to pop on in and say hi to Jay and ask your question?
Hey Jay, very good to meet you. I'm relatively new to entrepreneurship myself. I spent 14 years working in the federal government. I was a cube monkey, but always felt like, I had more to offer. I had um, more potential within myself. I have a business background. So right now I'm in the process of, I have a proven concept. It's an online company, education company for mental health providers to get CEs. And I'm in this place where right now I need to continue to take myself out of the business, continue hiring um, people to do the functions that need to be done to run this thing while I sleep. And I'm having some growing pains in that area right now where I've had some false starts. I've tried the agency method where you hire an agency to come in. Now I'm hiring individuals to take up functional roles. So my question for you is, what is the best piece of advice you have regarding acquiring the right talent for business operations? And then I say, in quotes, making good hires.
Well, I mean, first of all, you don't want to hire in your own image. Second is you want to take plenty of time, and you want to be able to not only ask a lot of questions. I have clients sometimes pay people to come and hang in their office and watch and then share what they would do if they were running that or if they were to recreate it, depending on the job. You want to do as much legal due diligence as you can. You also want to, you want to see where they've worked before. And to the extent it's legal, you want to go online, find people that worked with them on LinkedIn and find out about them. You want to be very clear on the attributes you need them to possess. And the interview is only the outer periphery. I mean, you got to be very clear on what you want and where you want to take it. One of the biggest fallacies I've seen people do is they got a business doing $3 million and their goal is to do 50. So they hire somebody who ran a business at 50, but they don't verify that the person grew it from 3 million to 50. And the person at 50 who didn't grow it doesn't understand at all how to get it there. They just understand how to manage it there. So you've got to understand a lot of roles, and you want to see what they've done. You want to verify it. You don't want to just tell you what they've done. You want to walk you through the process they use so you can see if they really did it and if it was an original or they were basically directed by somebody. You want them to reconstruct for you how they did it. I believe if you can do it, you're better off paying somebody for a day of their time so that you can really, you have the right to really be much more probative, if that makes sense. And if there's somebody if you can define the role you want, and it's possible to go on LinkedIn and put everybody else in it who's in similar roles or who did similar roles. If somebody did that role and they're now retired, you call them and you maybe find 5 of them. You pay them each a few $100s for an hour or two of their time, and you pick their mind and ask them what they found were the attributes, what they found were the dangers, where they would find people. If you find somebody doing it in another avenue and they're either geographically close if they have to work at your office or if it's virtual, it doesn't matter. You might find talent there, but those are a couple of fast suggestions.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Next up, we have Nick calling in from Mexico City. Nick, come on in, buddy.
Absolutely. Yeah, appreciate your time here today, Jay. I was intrigued with what you indicated about finding new processes and methods, to create or find a new revenue source for your business model. For myself, I've been in the B2B space for about the last 30 years, major Fortune 100, 500 retail brands, if you will. And here more recently, I exited my company many years ago, just a little backstory. And now I've created an online, more of a YouTube channel, having a lot of fun with this and creating new revenue streams for myself. It doesn't feel like work, but it's generating some nice residual incomes. Your thought and your comment about the technology use, I'm kind of more similar to that. I'm not a tech individual, but I do like and enjoy learning the tech that's advantageous for the future and where the industry is going. I guess my question to you is, do you see online and social media being a nice lead generation tool and device with what your thoughts and experience hold?
Yeah, I do. But I think that the hardest thing today it's a duality. It's to stand out, but to be able to leverage that stand out. So you've got enough critical mass and scale that you can really use it for something. I think you got to be very distinctive. And there's just too much of the same everywhere. When we started, we had proprietary knowledge nobody else did. I freely gave recordings and everything away. And then the internet came in and everybody used it to give free or to give cheap or to ascribe that they had created it. And today, excuse me one second. And today, I think, yes, but you got to have some. If all you have to offer is what everyone else has to offer, then you're marginalized, you're commodity. You have to figure out, how can I make what I want to share? If it's education, if it's advice. I don't believe in information should ever be shared because it's neutral. It's either advice or it's education or it's entertainment, or if they can integrate all of them. But you got to do it in a way that is so distinctive. And at very least, if people aren't going to do anything with it, it has to intellectually validate. There's a very interesting person, and I don't even remember who first of all taught it to me, but there's a bunch of people teaching it now, and that is that your goal in life, if you're a business of any kind, is to have a perspective that no one else does, that you articulate and share in a way nobody else has or could. And the subconscious of the target audience says to itself, I never thought about it that way before. Now, that's an easy macro directive. I'm not telling you how to do it because I don't know what it is you do, and I don't know what it is you're trying to do, and I don't know what it is your audience is, and I don't know what it is you're trying to use to monetize it. And that's a longer, deeper, much more comprehensive type of a thing. But just those macro thoughts might help you.
Awesome. Thank you very much. I appreciate the feedback.
You're welcome.
Next, we have Simone Vincenzi calling in from Italy. Simone, come on in.
Yeah, thank you. First of all, I want to say a massive thank you, Jay, because I've been following your work for the past 10 years, and your thoughts and influence around strategic partnerships like shape the way I see business. Built for businesses with partnerships, and all my primary client acquisition channels are with strategic partnership. I just focus on that. It made sense. It just made sense.
It's great. I used to go all the time to Frank Miranda. You know him?
No, I don't.
I used to go to Italy all the time, and we had groups of entrepreneurs. I like it there. What can I do for you today?
So the question for me is that what I specialize in is creating high converting webinar funnels. And instead of using a script, we focus more on aligning to the style of the presenter, and also look at what does the audience needs to hear before they buy. Okay. So it goes on. That's how I'm different from others. And so far, we've been really serving smaller type of businesses, and we had a great result. But I'm ready to go and approach bigger businesses. So I wanted to have some creative ideas from you on either how to partner up with them or approach them, considering that one, I don't have case studies that would be relevant for them, but that's a space where I want to go into because I know that's where I can add the most value.
Okay, well, there's a couple of things that you could do. First of all, is prove to one person who has influence over a lot of the next size companies that you can do it for their business. And I'll tell you how I did it. If you're making a lot of money, go to a business you know has a terrible funnel or system and just say, I'll tell you what, I need to prove my worth at a larger level. Let's do a cutout. Let's figure out how to take a portion of your traffic or your leads or your visitors or whatever the denominator is that you would have, and I'll create at my cost the new funnel, and we'll operate it side by side. Give me 10% of your traffic or 20, and I want a share of the profit increase that I can produce. You know your metrics. If your average out of every 100 visitors, you sell 10, and the average buys, $60. If I can get 1 out of if I can get 20 and the average is 80, I want two different pieces of increase. And if I fail, then I'll be the one that loses it. But if I do what I said, I would want you to convert over to mine. And I'd also ask, since I'm funding it, that you also give me the greatest testimonial and you tell anybody else that I want you to, that I did this for you. And that's how I do that. When I started, I had done some things very significantly, but nobody knew about them. I had a body of work, but it hadn't been really well codified. So the first thing I did was codify it. And then I went to a company that at the time was the #1 audio publisher in the country. It's called Nightingale Conant. They're not big at all now. They sold their library to Audible, but they used to have they had hundreds of authors, of people like Tony and me and people like that. I mean, they didn't have me then, but they did afterwards. And I went to them and I explained what I had done, and I showed them my body of work, and I explained why it was so powerful, and I offered to apply it to their business gratis, and only if it paid off. I wanted them to endorse me to the top 100 authors that they published. What I did for them paid off very handsomely. They were willing to do it. I had them offer all these publishers that I would buy them 2 hours of my time to focus squarely on improving their authors' businesses. And that if I did that, I wanted them to endorse me to their audiences and to the world. And I got about 100 to say yes. And I spent 2 full months not making a penny and just doing these 2-hour consults. And about 85% had a very positive outcome and became my endorsers. And from there in, I had stature, and I had credibility, and I had a highly diverse audience. And this was back in the 90s or the 80s. And for many years, I was the dominant source because there was no internet, and I had all the players that were just telling the world that I'm really the real thing. So you got, if no one's coming to you, and there's also a concept. What is your first name?
Simone.
Simone. There's a concept that I really like. It's called the Aikido School of Marketing. Aikido is the martial arts methodology that uses the power of the enemy against the enemy. So if you've never done it at that level and you want to do it at that level, and it's going to be hard to get someone to pay you to do it at that level, but you have an enormous amount of success a couple of levels below, you don't try to avoid the truth. You let the truth be the motivator. You say, so somebody's got to make the investment. I don't know that I want to go through the effort of trying to persuade you to pay me to build your funnel. I'd rather persuade you to let me pay for building your funnel, and only if it outperforms, reward me. But if it does, reward me 2 ways: financially and also through endorsing me. And that's how I would do it.
All right, that's perfect. Thank you. I really appreciate this.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Good.
Next up, we have Tim Joyner calling in from South Carolina. Tim, come on in.
Hey Jay, it's good to meet you. I too have followed you for a long time, and glad to meet you in person. Happy New Year.
Thank you.
You mentioned being an ADHD entrepreneur. That certainly describes me. I've had multiple ventures for a long time. I've just had my biggest exit. I've sold the biggest company of the 5 that I was running, and now I have more time and more capital than I've probably ever had. Certainly more capital than I've ever had, and probably more time. And I know you don't have information about any of these, but just generally speaking, would you advise me to take that new time, energy, and capital and invest in the companies that I already have, the 4 that are remaining, or should I go seize new opportunities?
Well, what
Thoughts
are
on
they?
that?
What are the 4 generically? What was the one
So
you sold, first of all? What did it do?
the one I just sold was a SaaS company. We sold enterprise software to thrift stores, large thrift stores like Goodwill, to handle all of their. It's basically ERP for
Okay.
Goodwill.
All right. And
Just sold that one.
was it a big company?
It's big for me. We sold it for 20 million.
Okay. All
So
right. Okay. So, and did you own it outright?
No, I had partners.
Okay, so
So
what are the other four?
I'm sorry, say again.
The other four, what are they?
The other four that remain, one is a men's shoe company. We manufacture shoes in Brazil, bring them to the States, and sell them online. That's the hardest business I've ever run. I launched it several years ago, and it is just a break-even business now. It's a lot smaller than I wish it were.
All right.
Um, I've got several real estate ventures. I've got residential real estate, rental property. I have
Where do you live?
Greenville, South Carolina.
Okay.
Yep. Which is a fast growing, highly appreciating market. I do a little bit of consulting and coaching and fractional executive work. And then probably the most interesting thing I'm doing now is helping high octane entrepreneurs with their personal brands. So we'll put you in a studio wherever you are. We'll find a studio near you or build a studio in your office. We'll coach you how to say things in a way that gets attention and retains interest. And then we've got a team of editors in the Philippines. We'll edit it, we'll caption it, we'll syndicate it, and make you internet famous on YouTube or Facebook or Instagram or TikTok or wherever you want to be. So those are the four that remain.
Are you running all of them?
No, I have leadership in place in all of them.
Okay. I would say that, first of all, if I were reliving my life, it's not a regret, but it's a reflection. I wish, and I've gone through massive multi tens of millions of dollars of divorces, and I had a sociopathic partner that cost me tens of millions of dollars. But I wish I had invested in quality real estate that had very low encumbrance, not commercial, but either single or multifamily in really stable areas. Because I think as you get older, certain businesses work, they don't work. They have great asset value, they have no asset value. But real estate almost always, particularly if it's rental real estate in really quality and stable areas, is always going to it'll be valuable. In bad times when people can't afford their houses, they'll need it. In good times when interest rates are too high, they're going to need it. And I would put an enormous amount of my time in that if values are such that you can either get into them very fairly, or you can put enough capital in that it doesn't matter and that people will buy it for you over time. I would consider looking at each of those and asking yourself very sincerely, we did a really interesting program. I was talking earlier about all the different methodologies, and I forgot one. One of the ones that I came up with was called How to Multiply Your Multiple. It was talking about how to take that the average business is going to change hands every 7 to, I don't know, 12 years. I can't remember the stats now. And most people don't prepare for it. And if you're going to prepare for it, you're either going to be stuck with the multiple. First of all, you may not even have a sellable business. You want an omni-sellable business. Number two, if you have a higher than industry growth rate, if you have a higher than industry profit rate, if you have a far less than industry concentrated risk rate, and if you have a much greater preemptive advantage, and most people think it's going to be technological patent or it's going to be exclusivity, but it can also be having a much higher LTV that lets you invest a lot more on the front end to get buyers, or pay salespeople, or package bonuses, or go deeper into break even or loss. But you have to say, how many of those businesses have exit quality to them? And if the shoe business is a pain in the ass to break even, why divert your attention, your time to try to get it to mediocrity if it's really got complexities? If the brand building is really a service business, that in order to take it to any I'm not saying this good or bad, to take it to any significant capability or size is going to be a lot of work. But even at that level, it's not sellable. I generated, when I was in the seminar business, and we did $250 million in about 4 years. And I did it all through strategic alliances and partnerships. But that's $250 million. And that was back in the 90s. However, and I have more body of work. We have a clone that we're gonna release, and we already put 250 million words in it. We're putting another 250 million words because I have such a vast body of work. But that business, without me constantly promoting it, is almost worth nothing, even though it's got proprietary methodology. So if all you have is time, effort, opportunity, and intellectual and financial capital and human capital to invest, I think you got to start by having a very clear-cut criteria, the game you want to play. And then what has the highest and the most probable capability of getting you there. And if you don't know what it is, you're going to throw a lot of time, effort, and diversion. And I just think, I mean, and not just my stuff. If you learn my stuff or you learn anybody's stuff, and then you overlay it and say, how will this? I would spend a lot of time evaluating everything out there. We did a book, and it didn't do well, which is fascinating. It's 447 pages. I did it with Roland Frazier. It was called Business Wealth Without Risk. And it was all about the fact that most people start businesses from scratch, even though it has a 1 in 20 first year success rate and a 1 in 10, or 1 in, I think it's 1 in 10 5-year success rate. Whereas you can get control of businesses that are underperforming on strategy, marketing, all the different criteria, and you can get a lot of them for very low out of pocket, and you can blow them up and flip them for what you would normally make in a lifetime every 3 or 4 years, and you do it over and over and over again. But you got to find the right vehicles. I would say if you've got capital and the businesses you've got don't have, I mean, you got to decide, do you want cash flow or do you want wealth creation? It's two different things. Cash flow, you say, okay, I'll take this business, it's making $1 million. Let's see if we can make it 3. But even at 3, will anyone buy it? If the answer is no, they really won't unless I finance it for them, which means I'm stuck hoping they don't run it into the ground. Then I would say at your young age, if you change your strategy and just work on things that will make nice cash flow, but almost always have people standing in line to buy it once you get it to critical mass, that's all I would concentrate on. But I would put a bunch of my resources into quality single or multi-family real estate in very stable areas that aren't going to be affected by changing mores. And you don't want to be on the outskirts of of a place that can go bad or change. You also don't want to be too high end. But if it's very quality middle class, I think that would be, I mean, if I had a friend that was very fascinating. He was very successful, but he lived in a very humble house, and every year he bought 10 or 20 single family homes. He got to where he had 200 or 300 of them, and that was 35 years ago. They were long paid for. He makes about $5 million a year from them just on rental now, and anytime he really needs any money, he can either mortgage or he can sell them off. But he's got an income for life. He skis, he surfs, he plays golf. He's very stable. And I don't think at your young age, when I was younger, I just thought my businesses would be great as they are. And I never thought about exit. I never thought about net worth. I never thought about those things because I was too fascinated with all the wonderful dynamics of entrepreneurship. But I think if you really want to build something, you should look always as what's probability and outcome. What's the probability I can get it to a very large number if I want it for cash flow? If I don't want it for that, what's the probability I can get an exit? And can I turn my $20,000 or $20 million first experience into 200 million next? What does that take? What can I get control of? Maybe I should get rid of the other 4, use that capital to get another SaaS company, but make sure it's in a field that isn't going to be easily compromised by emerging technology. But I don't know if that helps you. That's just a couple thoughts.
That's great. Thank you for your thoughts. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
I'm curious to see what Tim does with that advice. I've heard we've discussed this before. We have Noah Lath calling in from Barcelona. Noah, come on in and ask Jay your question.
Hi, Jay. Thank you very much.
You're very welcome.
Sharing your advice and also following you. Yeah, I just bought a clinic, BHRT, like a longevity clinic in Miami, and we're expanding it in Dubai. And because Dubai is and the United Arab Emirates is so booming, we kind of getting overwhelmed by the potential ways to expand. So there are other clinics that doesn't have that knowledge who wants to collaborate. There are hospitals, there are influencers, there are congresses, there are seminars, and it's just too much to do everything. How, like, is there a framework to follow to choose the right way to do it? Is it funnels? Is it
Yeah,
seminars?
well, I
Is
mean,
it
if you have the
only
ability,
partnership?
no,
Should I
I get
focus?
it. I get it. I get it. I think the first thing is to isolate all the different revenue, I'll call it opportunities or options that you have available with that. One is licensing, one is opening your own, one is teaching it. And I think that if you have a limited infrastructure, and your capital doesn't matter to me, but if you don't have the capital to do it all yourself, you divide it and conquer. If you can find 10 companies you can license it to, where you create a derivative of your name, so your brand is always getting the value, and you get an override, and then you can spend your time developing the methodologies. And then if you wanted to teach it, you let all of those licensees source the people for you. And if it's paid, it's one thing. If they're putting up the money to promote it and you don't care about making money, you just want to feed more people to them, because every time they get $1, you get 10 or 15 cents. That's one thing. If the hospitals want to do it, and there's enough, it is not much. Training is the least strategic way to really monetize expertise, unless you do it in huge numbers. If you can do it in huge numbers, Tony does, whatever, he'll do 5,000 people for $10,000, and that's a good deal. And he also will get a couple hundred of them to pay him 85 or 150,000 for his mastermind group, and that's okay. But if you're not going to do it at that level, then you want to ask, what is the best residual way that I can use my knowledge or my methodologies, and get the most amount of value for, and reach the most amount of people I can help, but get rewarded in the most way. If you're going to do it yourself, there's nothing wrong with that, but you've got too many options there. And unless you've got a very deep bench of colleagues working for you, it's going to be very hard. But if you break and say, okay, I can do these 5 things, how can I do them all together? Well, if training is the least profitable and the hardest, but I get it to, but I make it something that has value to licensees because it drives business for them, then that is very interesting. If I can get 10 or 20 licensees, and each one every month is doing $200,000, and I'm getting 10 or 15% of that, and I'm getting 20, 30,000 from 10, I'm making $3 million just from that. And I can reserve that I want a certain geography that I will ultimately open my own. But I think you have to figure out how everything can fit well, and who's got more motivation than you to do it if you want to really saturate and envelop the market the fastest. But trying to do all of them, I think, is very expensive. It takes a long time. There's a fascinating adage, and it's a pretty cool one. Your problem is always going to be the solution to somebody else's problem or opportunity. You just have to figure out who it is, what it is, and then make them aware of it. They may not know it, but somebody out there, their businesses needs a longevity association. Somebody there needs, to add it to their hospital. And so I think I would divide and conquer. But if you, instead of trying to do it all yourself in a place that maybe has a lot of different rules and regs, I would see if you can license, if you can partner. And I would make part of the deal, if you licensed and partnered, as I said, a cutout. If there's a couple of parts of the city or the Emirates that you want to have for yourself, you just you just exempt those from it, so you can use the money they make you to open and fit it out with fabulous equipment and facilities and locale. But in the meantime, you help, a bunch of others basically become licensees of a brand that you own, so that brand becomes the default icon in the area. Now you've built an asset that has we were just talking about it has net worth. It could be sold. But that's what I would suggest. And unfortunately, I have to stop, but I hope this has had value to everybody.
A lot. Thank you very much.
Yeah, Chris.
Excellent. Jay, I've got a question for you that after hearing your answers to all these guys, I really want to ask you. You mentioned a quote that you have on your website that the unexamined life is not worth living. And then you go on and saying that a business that is not constantly examined, re-examined, and measured, including both its tangible and intangible performance factors, is not worth owning. Can you tell us a little bit on how you like to examine businesses and how you do that on a regular basis?
Yeah, I can. And hold on one second. I just got to see my schedule though. 1 second, Chris.
Okay.
See how much time they've allocated for this.
We should have to 30 after.
They do.
Okay.
Yeah. So if you were to become a private client of mine, I would have you answer a 200-question assessment. It looks at every correlation, every implication, every anomaly, every financial denomination, every experiential facet that your business has achieved that you don't even know about. And I would take that first of all. But we have a progressive system, and I do one of two things. I either go from A to Z, but my preference is to do what I would call a derivative of probably constraint theory, which means you look at the biggest single factor that's constraining greater performance, greater profitability, greater success, that if you just removed and improved that alone would dramatically increase performance. And then you look at the next and the next. But if you want to go A to Z, I'm known for the 3 ways to grow a business model. There's only 3 ways to grow a business model. You increase the number of buyers, you increase the size and the profit of each transaction, you increase the frequency of transaction, or you increase what's called the utility value, how many other ways you can ethically monetize somebody if you have nothing else to sell them. There are 3 advanced ways. They are: 1, you penetrate a new market or niche every year. 2 is you add a new product or service every year. 3 is you acquire a company, a product, a sales force, a database, a URL, a discussion group. I would do that first. The next thing I would do is build somebody a power parthenon. A power parthenon means most companies, businesses, individuals, consultants, they are dependent on one primary source for all their income, not because it's the best source or the only source. It's just they got comfortable with it. We try to get our clients, our private clients, to do up to 9 of them. So whatever you're doing, and by the way, since I work on the geometry of the business, back to the 3 ways, we show that if you only increase those 3 categories, number of buyers, size of sale, and frequency by 10%, it produces a 33% increase in revenue. If you double them, it would be 100%. So everything I'm doing is looking at how to make the difference profound. And when you get that kind of top line difference, it can multiply bottom line even more, because a lot of the expenses and a lot of the overhead is fixed. But then I do the power parthenon. And we try, and I was talking about the 10-10-10, because if you're getting 100% of your revenue from one pillar or one source, and you add 8 more, and each one is only 10% more, it's not 10% more. It could be double again from a totally separate leverage point. It's where you get, we call it E2, exponential squared or cubed. The next thing we do is it's called the 9 drivers of exponential growth. They are the 9 key factors that I have identified that if you just change them a bit, it changes your performance a lot. And each of these are separate. They're not all the same. So you get exponential and exponential and exponential. Change your strategy or you become strategic, you change your results. You change your marketing. There's about 20 ways you change your results. You change your business model, you change your results. You change your use of capital, human capital, money, intellectual capital, relational capital, you change your results. You change your, I don't remember all of them, I haven't talked about it for a long time. You change your processes, systems, procedures, you change your results. You change your mindset. You talked about mindset, you change your results. Then we look at 9, we call them sticking points, and how your business is performing against all of them and the reasons why. We go all the way through this. Then we start looking at all the ways you can use partnering and strategic alliances and joint ventures to dramatically multiply your business without any real significant out-of-pocket investment or risk. Then we look at more esoteric things. We look at creating referral networks. We look at what I call power pivots. We look at rules for relevancy, because most people don't realize that almost everything in your interaction in business it stems from a font of how relevant you are, and relevancy is very dynamic, and it has to do with networks, not networking, and on and on and on. So, I mean, a lot of stuff. I don't know if that answers your question or not.
It was a great answer. Do you have a resource where the audience could find out your strategy for analyzing that?
Yeah, we used to have 800. I'll tell you something tragic. I used to freely give 800 resources away without even asking for an opt-in, because I wanted to be a great benefactor, but I asked people to share it, and most people didn't do that. So I took most of them off. But I believe you can go on. I haven't looked at Abraham.com for a long time, but I also believe that we've got more stuff that's on YouTube that it does. We don't sell anything. I'm sort of a hypocrite. I would fire myself. I don't think everybody else uses my videos, but we don't even have ads for ourselves or links, I don't believe. But we've got tons of things that are actual education. I would think a lot of my books have been freely disseminated. You can find them. And I'll be happy to give you some resources you can give people. I mean, most of the people can't afford me. So we decide it helps my brand, Chris. We freely give people all kinds of things because it gets the word out, and the few people who can afford my retainers and share profit, are educated. So I can give you a collection of cool stuff. I mean, I got keynotes. We have 14 books we've done that I don't really sell anymore. I just give them to clients as a collection, like a resource collection. But we got $500 books on partnering. We got $1,000 book on recession proofing. We got books on tactics. We got books on using your brain better. We got books on being a sophisticated CEO. If I got older, I'm not as aggressive in promoting stuff. And we've got, we've done, I'm sure you can find them online. We've done free. I just got done buying any company that was $5 million or more in 8-hour hyper growth education, because we were looking for a handful of clients that I'd either power partner with and profit partner or mentor. We got tons of stuff. So why don't you offline? I'll have Desiree coordinate, and you don't even have to send them to me. I'll give you links, or not links. I'll just give you some digital files you can put on your own. And it always helps my brand. So I don't really care one way or the other. As I said, most of the people I help, they pay me very nice retainers that are out of the realm of most people. So it's fine. I'll be happy to do that.
I appreciate that, Jay. I'm sure the group will appreciate that too. Do you have one book that you didn't write or create that you recommend every entrepreneur read?
There's a couple of books that I was in 1975. I was running Entrepreneur Magazine, and we retained at the time the man who was the #1 agency in information marketing and in investment newsletter and brokerage, and he gave me a mentorship that was compressed into a day and a half, and he made me find a bibliography of books that had been written mostly in the 30s and 40s that changed my life. And the two that probably I read more than anything were by the same guy. His name was Claude Hopkins. And the books are called, the first one is called Scientific Advertising, and the other is called My Life in Advertising. Scientific Advertising is the distillation of this guy's principles, and My Life in Advertising are the experiences he actually encountered to formulate the principles. He was the father of measurable marketing, of risk reversal, of reason why, of lifetime value, and he was a very sophisticated thinker for the time, and that really shifted my thinking. I read a bunch of David Ogilvy books. Eugene Schwartz wrote some fabulous books, and most of these they have to be adapted to to today's world, but human nature is not going to change, and a lot of these things are just profoundly powerful. There's far too many copywriters who think they can just sort of look upwards for divine inspiration, but those are really good. But I'm not a voracious reader anymore. A lot of people like Think and Grow Rich, and it's inspiring, and I'm not demeaning it. It's helped a lot of people. But yeah, I mean, I love Stephen R. Covey's book. I like Stephen M. R. Covey's books on trust building. And there's just so many others out there. I mean, because since everyone can publish their own book now, you can almost put into a search any category you want and find 100 books on it. And a lot of the people wrote great books, but they didn't promote them well because they're not really promoters of it. And you can probably find more out there. I don't know. We have a lot of books. If you wanted a recommendation, the ones that tend to be the best, we sold 72,000 copies of my first book at $377 a piece, which sounds audacious, but it was a really fabulous book. It was called Money Making Secrets of a Marketing Genius and Other Fortune Building Lessons. And it was just an enormous articulation of my then body of work. The getting everything you can out of all you got for its genre was fabulous. It's still about 80% profound, and it's got about 336 case studies. None of them are actually, I mean, I think you buy that one. The rest of them you can't even buy. You'd have to get them from me, but I could probably give you some of them because we don't even try to sell them. It's really good, but it has two chapters that are silly. One is the internet one, which was written in 2000, and I never updated it, so it's embarrassing. And the other is it talks a lot about telephone marketing, which is telemarketing is a lot harder today. The Sticking Point Solution was written originally in 2008 for people who were getting devastated by the meltdown of the financial system, and it was really, and it still is really profound. I think that would be a good one. We did I can't remember what year we did it. We did $1,000 a copy book that was called Recession Proofing Your Business. We did a redo of it for Tony Robbins a couple of years ago, which was pretty interesting. And then we got so many other ones, but I can get you a bunch of them you can give your people. And you don't even have to, I don't need to try to steal all your people's opt-in emails. It doesn't matter to me. As I said, I have my body of work speaks pretty well for itself without being arrogant. So if I get anybody to extol my unique advantage and gift my things, it always comes back. And most people don't think that way.
Yeah, I'm sure they're happy to give up their emails too for you, Jay. We're going to wrap things up here and we can send you on your way. We appreciate your time, but I've got to ask Jay, you're a great dresser and I want to know where you buy your suits from.
It's different places. It depends. When I used to speak a lot, I would have all of them made I used to travel to China before the US and China relationships got strained. I used to do sold out seminars, and I'd go to Beijing, and I'd go to Shanghai, and I'd go to Shenzhen, and I'd go to Guangzhou, and I had a tailor that we would trade. I would help them, and they would give me, $15,000 and $20,000 custom suits, and I had $1,000 ties. But now, because it's not much that I speak anymore, except a couple of keynotes, I just, whenever I'm somewhere and I see something very interesting. We were in Brazil on vacation, and we went to Gucci's, and they had a fabulous turquoise velour sport coat with Gucci emblems, but it wasn't gaudy. It was, I don't know, 5 or 10 grand, and I bought it. And I was in in Italy and saw one, but it's not a one. I don't have a single source anymore. Just things that I think are. I've always tried to dress very distinctive, not loud, but very distinctive.
Yeah.
And it was for a purpose. It wasn't to be arrogant. I need, and Tony Robbins would call it state chain, that you need to get people out of their comfort zone so they're shocked and they pay greater attention.
Yeah.
When I used to do seminars, we would take 50 suits and a couple hundred shirts and ties. I would have like 4 huge bags, because I would change every break, and I would change not to try to impress them. I wanted to keep them guessing so they'd pay attention and they wouldn't divert their interest to their phone or something else. And I always thought that, I mean, in your age and younger, like t-shirts and sort of grungy look, and there's nothing wrong with that. And I've always said, if I want to gain your attention, I've got to look different, and I've got to be different, and I have to have a different paradigm that I'm offering, and a different knowledge base. But part of it is the image that you personify. But that's just for me. I mean, I don't know if I was somebody that wasn't more public and didn't have, and also, and this is not a lament, it's just clinical. I have to compete against a bunch of people that are half my age, and the young ones think that I'm a calcified, over the hill person who's probably sitting on the steps of the old age marketer's home, drooling and nostalgically waxing about the 70s. And so I don't do a lot, but when I do things, not to be vindictive or cruel, I have to sort of come out with all the guns blazing and demonstrate right from the get-go that I'm not as inconsequential in my intellectual prowess as people would think. And so a lot of it has to do with how you set the stage, and then how you basically personify it after that, and how you deliver it, and obviously the quality of the message and the distinction of it.
Absolutely. I appreciate that. Jay, we're going to wrap everything up, and I want to thank you so much for coming on the show. Thank you for sharing your wisdom and everything. If you don't mind, give us a big smile. Actually, everybody in the audience, give us a big smile, and we'll do a New Year's Eve screenshot. Ready? 3, 2, cheers.
And where are you, Chris?
I live in Barcelona, so
I love Barcelona. I love
Yeah.
Barcelona. It's so beautiful. Last time we were there, we stayed at the Mandarin Oriental, which was, because we had our suite right overlooking the street, and I can't remember, it was like a church or something across the street from it.
Yeah.
And so much fun. And we went to, what's the museum down the street?
There's quite a few. I don't know. There's the Picasso Museum. We have Sagrada Familia. We have there's the Gaudi Museum. There's a Gaudi apartment. Yeah.
Yeah, we went there. It was very fun. And the food is very, very good. Everyone's got like 20-course meals.
They know how to live life over here, Jay. That's it. That's why I'm here.
It's very fun. All right. Well, thank you all, and the best of luck next year. And I hope that some of it may not be wisdom, but some of the perspective I shared will take root and maybe shift a little bit your worldview.
Yeah, for sure. And if the listeners want to learn more about what you have going on, is abraham.com the best place to go?
Abraham.com. If they're big enough and they want to explore anything, they can go to jay@abraham.com, and my assistant will will alert us. But if they just want to learn about my body of work, I'm relatively sure we still have a lot of cool things up. I haven't been to my website for a year, so I don't know.
Well, we're going to let you go, Jay. You guys, anybody else wants to hang out and chat for a few minutes, but happy
you.
New Year to you
Same
and
to you.
thank you. And wishing you a great 2025.
And ditto for everyone. Thank you, Chris. Bye.
Bye, Jay. Thank you. If you like what you're hearing and make sure you don't want to miss any of these tips, please subscribe, leave us a review, and share with your friends. See you on the next episode.